Google Analytics is one of the most popular analytics tools out there and is also really difficult to use. And I say that as someone who thinks about websites all day, every day. And the thing that's most frustrating to me is that it didn't used to be this way. The older version of Google Analytics, which you'll hear called Universal Analytics, was a whole lot easier to use. I promise I'm not going to stay on this soapbox the whole time we're talking, but it is something that, July of 23, Google Analytics 4 was released, which is GA4, you'll hear it called. It's what we're using today. And it's really powerful, has a lot to offer. But unless you live and breathe analytics, it just takes a lot to navigate and a lot to learn well. And we've just kind of been waiting for years now for Google to improve the overall user experience and just make it easier for us all to use. And they have made some improvements. It's just still pretty tough to navigate. And there's such a high learning curve that it's really tough to actually find what you're looking for and pull out meaningful insight. So if you have felt that, first of all, know that you are in good company. You are not alone. Like Nikki said, it's something that we hear from nonprofits all the time. And because of that, what we hear is basically folks saying, I'm just not going to use it. I'm just not going to tap into my website analytics because of how daunting it feels. But using website analytics thoughtfully can be incredibly helpful and incredibly powerful, right? Like you can learn more about your website visitors. You can see what's working and what isn't working on your own website, and just generally make much more informed decisions when it comes to the way that you use the web to move your mission forward. So that's really our goal here today. We want you to walk away knowing where to find these 5 simple high impact reports in GA4, Google Analytics 4, that you can use right out of the box without needing to set them up or do anything overly technical. And then you can use that to better understand your visitors, improve your website, again, without needing to be a developer yourself or an analytics wizard. So hopefully this all just makes Google Analytics feel a little bit less daunting. And I just wanted to mention, awesome to see some familiar names in the chat. We were having a little bit of audio kind of issue earlier today. So if at any point you can't hear us clearly, just let us know in the chat and we'll do some troubleshooting, but hopefully everyone can hear us okay at this point. So, all right, cool. Let's dive into the actual analytics side of things. Part 1 here. How do you actually get the most out of website analytics? It actually starts before you even log into Google Analytics. So one of the biggest mistakes that we see nonprofits make with Google Analytics is logging in without a specific purpose in mind. But think about it. Like if you didn't know what you were looking for, it's even easier to get turned around in there. And you're just going to find a ton of numbers and charts that seem interesting, but don't actually help you understand your website or your visitors or ultimately move your mission forward. So before you even log in for the first time, before you go looking at charts and graphs and data reports, we always recommend getting clear on 2 questions first. First, what question or questions are you trying to answer? Like, what is the specific information that you want to know? And what are you trying to learn, right? Like understanding exactly what you're looking for gives you a much clearer place to start. And it grounds you a bit and just kind of helps you focus on the reason that you're logging into Google Analytics in the first place. And when you log in, you're going to be greeted by just a ton of information. So knowing what you came to do and what questions you ultimately are trying to answer will help you stay on task and resist those rabbit holes that are really easy to run down once you get into the data itself. So again, what is the actual kind of question that you're trying to answer? And then second question here, what do you plan to do with that answer once you have it? Like how will you use this information? What are you prepared or hoping to do with it? Right? We want to move past just being interested. We want to resist that temptation to just kind of like see what we find in there. And we want to use this information to do something meaningful. to propel our mission forward in some meaningful way. So if you don't have a great answer here, it might be a clue that this is sort of turning into what we call data for data's sake. And we want to avoid that as much as we possibly can. So the more we can connect, again, to these two framing questions, what questions are we trying to answer? What do we plan to do with that answer once we have it? The more we can make sure that the time we're spending on analytics is ultimately going to be time well spent. So with these two framing questions in mind, we can actually get into Google Analytics. And today we're going to be going over 5 simple reports that you can access in Google Analytics right now. Again, right out of the box, no special setup, no conversion tracking required. As we get started, though, it is worth just saying up front, there is a lot of information that you can find in Google Analytics for. And if you have the time and the expertise to do more advanced tracking, kind of set things up in a more robust way, absolutely go for it. That's more kind of Google Analytics 201. This is going to be more of the 101 approach. Our focus today is really those just handful of relatively low effort, but still really high impact reports that you can use right away. And like Nikki mentioned at the outset, we try to keep nonprofit website office hours really actionable. And so that's the approach we're going to take here today. We want you to walk away ready to dive into Google Analytics later this afternoon. Is there more to uncover? Absolutely. But our hope is these will give you some footing and help you just get value out of the data that you're seeing in there, even if you don't have time to take it a whole lot further. So let's dive in. The first report here is going to be our most popular pages reports. And we're actually going to pull up Google Analytics and walk through this together. But in terms of those framing questions, like the most popular pages report is really helping us answer some pretty critical questions, like what pages on my site are getting the most traffic? What content does my audience care about? And when it comes to updating content on my site, which pages should I start with? If you've come to, we've talked about website audits in the past, something we talk about is pulling our popular pages so that we can see which pages around the site are going to be the highest leverage use of our time. So this is actually a report that's going to be pretty critical when we're auditing or improving our website. And that really just stems from the fact we know time is tight for most nonprofits out there. And if you're not sure kind of where to focus your limited time, looking at the most popular pages report can be a really helpful place to start. So instead of kind of making guesses about what people care about, this report will give you actual data about which programs, blog posts, resources, on your website are getting the most visits. So here's how we actually find it. Let me get up analytics. Cool. So when you log into analytics, this is kind of the home screen you'll be greeted with. And I do want to mention for all of this, we're just using one of our demo sites. So the data on your website will be hopefully a little bit more interesting than what you'll see here. But hopefully for illustrative purposes, this is still really useful. So when you log in, we're going to come over here. We're going to use this sidebar navigation here to go into reports. And then we are going to scroll down to engagement and click on pages and screens. And what this is going to load up, hopefully you can see that all right. I'll go ahead and minimize that, is a visual chart here, and then the actual data of our most popular pages. And the couple of things, this is sort of universally can apply across all of our reports, but a few things I did want to highlight. First of all, the date range. So by default, it shows the last 28 days. That could be useful. A lot of times you're going to want to broaden that out. And you can select some sort of like pre-selected options, last 30 days, last 90 days, quarter to date, this month, last month. Those are ones that I will certainly use from time to time. I'm just going to do last calendar year here to get a bunch of data. Again, these are just our demo sites. And so we want to use a big time range. And then I wanted to show just kind of how the URL structure works, because this can be kind of confusing the first time we're getting into analytics. So what it actually does is it pulls out what's called your root domain. So let's say your website is nonprofit.org. What you're seeing here is nonprofit.org is not showing up anywhere, but it's showing all of the information after that domain. And so for instance, here it says /about/team. That's going to show the traffic to our teen page, which is a subpage of about, which obviously is a subpage of our root domain. So when you just see slash here, that's your homepage. That's, I think, the most confusing thing that people don't always know right away with Google Analytics, is that slash is just your homepage. And then all of it, yeah, you can basically just add your domain at the beginning of all of these if you wanted to type that URL into a browser. Also wanted to show, when you're in any report, you can just kind of hover over the header of each and get a little definition of kind of what these dotted underlined terms mean. So that can be really, really useful. And then let me see. Oh, this is also something that is a lot of times key, is you'll see by default, it's showing 10 pages, 10 rows per page. So it's just showing our top 10 pages. And we have 44 pages in this report. So we would have to jump between pages to see them all. You can just click this drop down and broaden this out. So you could go to 25, could go to 50 and see all of those on one listing. And this is also really useful if you're going to start exporting data, because then you can export more rows into that data. The other thing I wanted to show, so just by default, this report, our most popular pages, it's showing the number of views, the number of page views for those pages, and you can see it's sorted by page views. And then it's also showing the percentage of the whole. So at the top here, it says we've had almost 12,000 total page views. 7,800 of those were to the homepage of this demo site. So that's just over 2/3 of all the traffic. That's what that 66.77% is. And then, the next most popular one was our one-time volunteer opportunities page, which had 2.5% of total page views. So for this particular demo site, the homepage is dominating page views. And we can also see things like active users, how many views per active user. We can start to see some engagement time data. So yeah, just a variety of kind of key pieces of information. And the other thing I wanted to show about this report is something I think is really useful, is you can actually search within this report to isolate sections of your website. So let's say, for instance, we wanted to just know how popular our blog posts were. I can just come up here and type /blog and hit enter. And you'll see what it does is it actually filters all of the data that was in here and shows only blog posts. And so it's showing our main blog, all of our category pages, our individual blog posts. And then we can also see still the percentage of the total. So our blog, our main blog page and our blog posts have had 547 page views. And that was just under 5% of total page views during that time. So, yep, hopefully that's a helpful starting point. I do think this is one of the most popular reports that people use, and for good reason. It just helps us uncover the most kind of popular pages on the website and see kind of how folks are engaging with them. So again, to get to that report, jump back over here. To get back to that report, just going to go into the sidebar, click on reports, and then engagement, pages, and screens. The next report here, top landing pages. So this is going to be distinct from that general kind of popular pages report that we just looked at. Instead of thinking of just our most popular pages, this report is going to show us the most popular pages that visitors begin their journey on your site. So it's going to help you answer questions like, which pages are my visitors landing on to start their journey? Are those pages giving them a strong enough first impression to stick around? And I think that second question is actually really key. It helps you sort of like understand that entry point. What is that first impression that folks have on your website? Because every visit starts somewhere, right? And knowing what pages folks actually land on first will help you just provide them the best experience that you possibly can from that first moment, that first interaction with you. And it's worth noting, it's not always your homepage, right? Like, a lot of people think that the homepage is where people are starting their journey. It's a very common misconception. It's one that we've certainly talked about in office hours gone by. But a lot of visits do begin on the homepage, but we actually just published some benchmark data that aggregates data for over 130 nonprofit websites. And Nikki will share a link to that, that benchmark data in the chat. The homepage is certainly a very popular entry point. Thanks, Nikki. Yeah, there it is. But it is far from the only entry point. And in this research, more than 60% of website sessions started on another page that wasn't the homepage. So, and on some websites, that's actually a lot. That's low. It's actually even like a higher percentage of traffic starts on non-homepage pages, on interior pages of your website. So just kind of knowing exactly which pages your visitors are landing on to start their journey can really help us optimize those landing pages. So in terms of how we actually find that and what the report shows, let me jump back over to Google Analytics. So we're going to come back over here to reports. Whoops. What's going on? They're supposed to be dropped down. Here we go. Minimize them. All right, so we're going to go to engagement and then come down here to landing page. And this is going to show us, still looking at the last calendar year, our top landing pages over the last year. Right now, it's defaulted to show by day. We can change this dropdown if we wanted to show by week, by month. Some reports, this is more useful than others, but you'll see it just updated. And then I can hover over this graph if I want to see kind of individual weeks at this point, and it'll actually change sort of dynamically based on which pages are popular there. And you'll notice a couple of things. So within the top landing pages report, I'm going to change this to be a bigger window again from 10 to 25. That'll show us a pretty good sampling of our 36 landing pages. So for us, a lot of traffic is landing in the homepage, but a lot of traffic is also landing elsewhere. So let's see, we had just under 15% of traffic landed in the homepage, started in the homepage, but see like pretty healthy chunks of traffic landing elsewhere on this site as well. And we can see the full URL for those right here. And this is by default organizing it by sessions. So sessions, you can just think of a session essentially as like a unique browsing period of time, a unique browsing session, just the time when someone is actively kind of using your website. And if you hover over these again, you can see a quick definition, and then you can click on these links to get a much more in-depth, nerdy explanation if you would like to. We can see the number of users. So this is just the number of people visiting the website. We can also see the number of new users. So how many of those users were first-time visitors? Now, a little bit of a grain of salt there. Like if people are coming from multiple devices, it's possible that they would come in as new users a couple of times. Like if I came on my computer and then I came on my phone and there was no way for Google Analytics to know that I was the same person if I'm not like logged into anything, they might track those as independent. But it's still really helpful to just see sort of like how many of our users are new or first-time visitors. And then there's this average engagement time per session column. This data is a little tricky because there are a lot of reasons that Google Analytics can miss this data. So I wouldn't think of it as absolutely true as much as I would think of it as sort of the relative value of how engagement looks across pages. So, when I look at this, it's not necessarily true that all 524 of these sessions averaged out to be 11 seconds on average, but it is helpful for me to say, oh, on average, people are spending a lot more time on our homepage than they are on some of these subpages. Now, these numbers are a lot lower than what you'll probably see in your analytics because this is just demo site data. But it can be helpful really as a way for you to compare pages, and then also really helpful as a way for you to establish some kind of baseline for yourself. And then let's say we're trying to optimize our homepage to better engage visitors. We could say over the last year, our average was 11 seconds. What did it look like after we made those changes? Did that time go up so that we can at least see directionally the impact of the changes we were hoping to make. So that is the top landing pages report. Let me jump back over here to the presentation again. To get there, I'm going to go into the sidebar, click on lifecycle, and then engagement, and then landing page. It looks like we have some great questions coming in the chat too. Keep those coming because we will be carving out time for Q&A, and we'll make sure that we get to as many of these questions as we possibly can. All right, next up, traffic sources. I feel like this is one that a lot of people find really, really interesting. If you or your boss or your board have ever wondered how folks are finding your website, this is the report for you. It's really going to help us understand where visitors are coming from and what sources are just kind of sending people to our website. It's going to help us answer questions like what channels are driving the most traffic, what channels are driving the most engaged traffic to our site, and then also, do the results that we're seeing from each channel justify the time that we're spending there? This last question I actually think is especially helpful for people looking to understand just how your kind of marketing efforts are paying off. Like for example, maybe you use social media and email marketing and maybe even some paid ads to drive folks to your website. A report like this can help you see how those efforts are working and compare them to one another and say, is it worth the time? Is it worth the money that we're putting into these different channels? So in terms of getting back into Google Analytics, how do we actually find that? Let me just jump between my screens again. All right, so we're going to jump to a slightly different part of analytics. So we're still in reports over here. We're still in life cycle, but here we're going to open up. Sorry, I zoomed in my screen, so it's fighting with me a little bit. Open up acquisition, and then I'm going to come down to traffic acquisition. And this is actually a kind of relatively new feature in analytics. They're using some AI to crunch the numbers and pull out some kind of insights for you. Sometimes they're helpful, sometimes they're not, but you can definitely read them over. So I'm going to go ahead and close that out though, because we don't need that right now. And so yeah, you'll see this is showing our most common traffic sources. It's showing direct traffic drove the lion's share of traffic here. Almost 98.5% of our total traffic came from direct traffic. And we're actually going to, in a second, talk about defining all of these traffic sources, because I think that's something that's a little confusing. But I wanted to show the report first. So you'll see, yeah, we have these 5 different traffic sources, and then next was referral with just under 1%. This is because, again, we're using demo data, so that's why these are so low. But one cool thing, you can also see engaged sessions. And if I hover over it, you'll see the definition there, saying the number of sessions that lasted longer than 10 seconds or had a conversion event or 2 or more screen or page views. So basically, it's not hollow traffic. It's not people who landed on your site and immediately bounced. It's people who were on the site for at least 10 seconds or took some sort of action on the site, like they clicked something to go to a new page or did something that triggered a conversion event, which we're not going to get into too much today. And then you can actually see the engagement rate, which this is just the math between these 2 columns. Again, average engagement time. And then we can start to see some events, which, yeah, again, we're not going to get too much into today, but you can start to see which pages are driving events on the site. Like I mentioned, we did want to quickly define the top traffic sources, because I think that's actually one of the biggest roadblocks between getting value out of this report is fully understanding exactly what each of these channels are. So first, direct traffic. This is folks. So the most common way to think about direct traffic is folks who typed your URL directly into their browser or clicked a bookmark, and basically people who came directly to your website. And that is absolutely true, but it's also worth understanding that direct traffic is sort of Google Analytics catch-all bucket for a lot of sessions where it just doesn't really know how someone got to your site. So for instance, if someone clicks a link that a friend sent them in a personal email, that would come in as direct traffic because there's no other traffic information in it. It's just the link. So that would come in as direct traffic. If you click the link that someone sent you over Slack or over chat, That would come in as direct traffic. So a lot of traffic from visitors who use like ad blockers or privacy blockers would also track as direct traffic. So yeah, direct traffic gets to sort of be not problematic. It's just become sort of a catch-all bucket, and it is worth understanding that this is basically a large collection of traffic that Google just doesn't really know what to do with exactly. These other ones are a lot more clearly defined. So referral traffic came from a link on another website, like a partner organization linking to you, or news coverage that you earn. The news site links to your website. That'll come in as referral traffic. This is also where a lot of traffic from AI tools is showing up these days. So like ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, some of that sometimes gets lost as direct traffic, but a lot of that is actually being captured as referral traffic. And we'll show you how to dig into referral traffic in just a few minutes. Email came from a link in an email. Typically, this is actually coming from like an email marketing tool. So if you're using like MailChimp, Constant Contact to send your emails, those links in those emails are being tagged in a way that Google Analytics can read and understand that those are coming your way from a link within an email that was sent out. Organic search came from free unpaid results in Google, Yahoo, Bing. It's just those kind of like general links within a search result. Paid search came from search ads, like Google Ads. If you have an ad grant running, traffic is most likely should be showing up as paid search in Google Analytics. And then there's also organic social, which is links to your website from social media that are tagged correctly. I sort of say that because there is some pretty compelling research out there to suggest that a meaningful percentage of social traffic gets missed by Google Analytics and is added to that direct bucket when there's not attribution in the URL itself. So I always say, like, the organic social, take it with a grain of salt. If you compare, like if you look at the clicks within the social platform and compare that to Google Analytics, they might not line up one-to-one because some of that might be misattributed as direct traffic. There's also paid social. If you're running ads on social channels, come in as paid social. And then the last one is this unassigned bucket. This is usually traffic that Google is confused about. And it often happens when people set up a custom link in some way, but Google is having trouble kind of understanding the information that was in that custom link. You'll hear these called UTM parameters sometimes, or campaign parameters, but basically it's essentially another catch-all bucket, kind of like direct traffic, but the difference is direct is more Google Analytics saying, there's no attribution information here, so I don't know where they came from. I'm just going to say that it was direct. Unassigned is basically Google Analytics saying, there is some attribution information here. It's just really confusing to me when I try to read it, and so I don't really know what to do with it. I'm just going to dump it here. So those are all the traffic sources. Hopefully that is a helpful breakdown. I know we ran through it really quickly, but we will be recording this. We'll make sure that recording is available so that you can use this as sort of a companion alongside viewing the traffic sources report. And if you want to get back to that report, here it is again: acquisition, traffic, acquisition. All right. Now we're going to look at a couple of other reports that I think are pretty cool, can be pretty useful. So we're going to look at languages. And this is coming from a place, it's pretty common, I think, when we look at our website to sort of subconsciously assume that everyone experiences our website the same way that we do. Certainly goes beyond language, includes things like how pages are named or organized, but it absolutely includes language. Like, just because you or your team primarily communicate in one language does not mean everyone who visits your site is in the same boat. And thankfully, most modern browsers will actually offer to translate website content automatically and by default, if your website is at least built in such a way that makes that possible. And so you've probably seen this when you go to a website that's not in your native language and it says, this is in Portuguese. Do you want me to translate it to English? And you can click Yes. But some people have more kind of like nuanced content that they don't necessarily want to rely on automatic translation. A lot of times people that are doing something that's medical or legal, or even people who just have sort of like complex intake workflows, things like that, just automatic translation sometimes could be insufficient. It's getting better with the rise of AI. It's getting better all the time. But if you need to capture that nuance, a lot of times we end up at least having the conversation with an organization around whether or not manual translation of some of their content is going to be worthwhile. So I think this report is really helpful. It just kind of helps you know if looking into an alternative to automatic browser-based language translation is going to be worthwhile, and just kind of help you answer the question, like, first of all, what languages does our audience speak? And then on top of that, are we sort of adequately meeting the needs of visitors who speak other languages when they visit our website? So in terms of how we find that, let me jump back into Google Analytics. We are jumping to a whole new part of analytics here. So I'm going to close Lifecycle, and we are now going to be in this user section of reports. So still in reports, we are in user, and I'm going to open user attributes and click on demographic details. And you'll see by default, this is showing a country report, which can also be really interesting. You can see where in the world people are coming to your website. But to jump this over to languages, we're going to click this drop down here where it says country, and we're going to select language from this drop down. And here you can see right away, we're seeing that 97.5% of visitors to this website had their browser set to English. So we are predominantly serving English-speaking folks with this website, which is helpful information to know. And then we can start to say, okay, what did engagement look like? These numbers are so small that there's not going to be a whole lot of statistically significant value to this data. But if your mix looks different, maybe you have 25% of your visitors speaking a different language, or maybe it's even more, depending on the nature of your work. You could start to say, okay, what do engaged sessions look like for those visitors? What does the engagement rate look like? We have a 23% engagement rate for English speakers. What does that look like for Spanish speakers, French speakers, German speakers? And then we can start to see average time, again, can be useful, looking at sort of the relative average time there. You want numbers that are a little bit bigger than this to do that sort of cross cohort comparison. But hopefully this is at least helpful in answering some of those questions we talked about. What languages are people speaking when they come to our website, and how much do we need to invest in the experience for folks who speak a language other than the language that our content is predominantly presented in? So again, in terms of how you get there, user attributes, demographic details, and then just remember to adjust that drop down over there from the default country to language instead. All right. And the last sort of standalone report that we are going to look at here is the devices report. Now, I doubt that I am breaking news to anyone who is here that mobile traffic continues to grow. And if your visitors are using mobile devices like phones or tablets to view and engage your website, it's important to just kind of ensure that your site looks and works the way it should, right? And remains easy to use for folks that are not on a computer. But talking about things like visitor experience can sometimes start to feel really subjective, right? Everyone has a different opinion about how easy something looks to use or how confusing something is. So hopefully this report helps you bring some actual data to back up the kind of experience that you're providing your visitors on smaller screens. And we can answer questions like, how much traffic are we actually getting from visitors on smaller screens, like phones or tablets? How does visitor engagement compare based on the device that folks are using? And do we need to spend time leveling up the mobile experience? Is that going to be a good use of our limited time, of our limited budget, of our limited resources in general? So in terms of how we actually find that in Google Analytics, still going to be in user attributes here, but instead, we're going to be in user, but instead of user attributes, we're going to go down to tech. Close this so we don't get confused. Open tech and click on tech details. And you'll see what this defaults to, showing us the browser folks are using, which is interesting, especially if you're a developer, it could be interesting. But for most average non-profiteers, you're not necessarily going to need to spend too much time on the browser. So we're going to click that drop down, and we are going to click on device category here. And you'll see what this pops open is it's showing desktop and mobile. Again, the caveat here is this is just our demo site. And so let me see if I actually expand the end of this window. This is how you set a custom date range. If you want to see it, you can click the drop down and you can set a start and an end date. Let me just jump up to today. Oh, no. It's a little finicky sometimes. So I'm going to set this at the beginning of last year, set my end date to be today. Let's see if we have any tablet data in there. Yep. So these are usually the three that you'll see. You'll see desktop, you'll see mobile, you'll see tablet. And then again, pretty similar columns that we looked at previously, where we can see active users, new users, engaged sessions, start to compare the engagement rate. But, looking at this data here, I would say we don't need to spend a ton of time leveling up the mobile experience because 99% of our traffic is coming on desktop. I would guess that your mix is going to look a little different when you get in there on your actual kind of marketing website. When you look at your actual organization's website, I would guess you're going to see more mobile and tablet traffic, but it still could be really illuminating to see what those percentages look like. And a lot of times it really will vary based on your marketing mix. What channels are you using to drive people? Because some channels will skew more heavily towards especially mobile traffic. So in terms of how you get there, again, you're going to be over here in the user section of our reports, and we're going to click tech details and then just change that drop down from the default, which is browser, to device category. You'll be all set. All right, so those are the reports. These are the reports that are just meant to be sort of like easy to find, easy to use right out of the box, no special configuration required. If that's all you use them for, fantastic. You should still be able to get some really meaningful insights out of those. But eventually, you're probably going to look at one of these reports and have some kind of follow-up question. And it's not always possible to get the answer to that question based on the default report. And so what we wanted to show here today is how to level up reports using what are called secondary dimensions, which I know sounds like a mouthful, sounds very jargony. Really what we're talking about here is layering on an additional kind of way of slicing up the data, subdividing your data a little bit further. It's just essentially, a secondary dimension is essentially just an additional attribute added to a report used to break down primary data into a more specific kind of actionable way to hopefully glean additional insights. So I'll show you really quickly how that works. We're not going to dive too deep into this, but this is one area that I love nerding out on when I get into analytics, and I do find it really useful. So we're here in our traffic acquisition. I actually will show this in Google Analytics, but we'll show it in a screenshot here first. So in order to do this, we are in our traffic acquisition report. So these are the channels that were showing up. Let's say we wanted to drill into referrals. We just wanted to see sort of like which websites are referring traffic to us, and like not only how much, but what does the engagement look like for the different folks that are sending traffic our way? Like who is actually referring visitors to our site, instead of going and building a really kind of custom report, which Google wants you to do in the Explore tab, which conversation for another day. That's That's probably a series of office hours for us to drill into how those custom reports work. If there's interest, maybe we would get into that at some point. But we can just layer on what's called a secondary dimension here and start to slice that information up. And we're going to be looking at this little plus sign next to that drop down in order to add this in. So I will show you in the live Google Analytics how this works. I'm going to go back into lifecycle, acquisition, traffic acquisition. Again, major caveat, this is just demo data, so it's not going to be as interesting as what you're going to find. We have 32 visits from referrals, just because, I mean, people are not linking to our demo sites from their sites. But if we wanted to slice this up and drill into it more, we could click this plus sign. And this is something I would definitely check out in your own analytics. Click this, and we are just going to type source. And this is the first one we want. It's this one right here. It says session scoped over here, which is what we want. And then this right here says session source. We're going to click on that. And you'll see what it does is it layers on an additional kind of subdivision here. So direct traffic, there's no source. It's just direct. It doesn't know what to do with that. But we can start to see, oh, okay, organic search, mostly coming from Google. I'm going to, oh, we only had 11, so I don't need to expand that out too much. But you can see the different referral ones. And if you wanted to layer on this search feature, you can come up here and type referral into this. If I hit enter, this will show me a filtered view of just my referral traffic. So, most of our referrals came from google.com. We got some from Google Docs. We got some from our own website, got some from Asana. This is going to be a lot more interesting if you do it on your data, but these are the kind of two steps I would take. I would add this session source, secondary dimension, and then I would search by referral, and that'll show you traffic that's coming from the various referral sources, different websites. A lot of the AI tools will be showing up here as well. So you'll see things like ChatGPT potentially showing up here if you're getting traffic from LLMs like ChatGPT. And that's it. That's really what we wanted to cover. Want to make sure we have some time for questions. I did see the chat pop in. So I want to make sure we do carve out time to get some of those questions answered. But hopefully at this point, you have 5 simple high impact reports that you can access in Google Analytics. Don't need to do complex coding. Don't need to set up complex tracking or special configuration. You don't need to pull your hair out trying to set up detailed custom reports. Just kind of easy reports you can use to answer some really common high leverage questions. If you have more time to spend in analytics, absolutely go for it. There is no shortage of data in there. But hopefully this just helps make Google Analytics feel a little bit less daunting and helps you back up with data, just some of those things that your gut is telling you about your website, your visitors, and where you should be spending your time.